Marvel has officially announced that the Multiverse saga will conclude with Secret Wars. But what does that mean? Which comic book storyline is being adapted for the MC? And how will it wrap up the Infinity Saga and the Multiverse saga? Well, today we're answering those questions and more in the MCU is ending. Secret Wars Explained. The comic that inspired Avengers. Doomsday. Now, before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for giving these videos a watch and for supporting me. If you like these videos, please continue to do so, because it really helps out, and if you don't, well, you can always leave a thumbs down, although your opinion is noted and appreciated. Either way, thank you for being here. So with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, now out in theaters, the future of the MCU has been set in motion. The Illuminati are now a thing in the MCU. The multiverse has been opened and closed. America Chavez is still alive. And now we know that Secret Wars is going to be the next big event in the MCU after the events of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But, for those who aren't familiar with the comics, what is Secret Wars? In terms of importance and scale, Secret Wars would go on to become one of Marvel's biggest storylines ever told. So much so that when Sony Pictures announced their Spike Home was going to adopt elements of the storyline, fans were excited but also very concerned that this might be the end of the MCU as we know it, especially considering the multiversal implications. But in the end, it was only sort of an adaptation. And while some aspects of the storyline did come to fruition, others didn't. It turns out that Secret Wars might have actually been teasing us all along. Because according to Marvel, the upcoming Secret Wars movie will indeed be based off of the comic book series of the same name, which was released in 1984 and saw the return of a popular villain from the first Iron Man film. The story follows marvelous heroes and villains being transported to a planet called Battleworld by an entity known as the Beyond who wants to study them. During the course of the story, heroes and villains are forced to team up, old rivalries are revisited, and new ones are formed. And some characters even get the chance to live out their ultimate fantasy. Such as Spidey finally getting to dan his own costume as opposed to the one that was designed by Uncle Ben, of course. As the story progresses, it's revealed that the Beyonder is far more powerful than he initially appeared. And once he unleashes his true form, our heroes find themselves in even more peril as they struggle to defeat him. In the end, the Beyonder is defeated and peace is restored to the multiverse, or so it seems. As the final pages would go on to reveal that the whole story had been nothing more than a dream of a young hero, who would go on to become a great ruler of a new universe. Now, I won't go into too much detail about the ending, because it contains major spoilers for the comics. But, suffice to say that the ending of the Secret Wars comic had huge implications for the entire Marvel Universe as a whole. And while it may seem like a dark ending for the MCU to go out on, especially considering the recent trend of killing off half of all the superheroes in every other movie. This is also where things get interesting, because it turns out that there are actually two possible endings to this story. In fact, there are four, and not all of them involve everyone dying. You see, after Secret Wars, Marvel would go on to publish two follow-up series that further explore the aftermath of the original Secret Wars. Secret Wars 2 and Secret Wars 3. Secret Wars 2 would go on to introduce us to a new character named the Maestro, who turns out to be a version of the Hulk from a destroyed universe. This version of the Hulk is smarter, more calculating, and a lot more ruthless. And he becomes a major threat to the safety of the universe, forcing the remaining heroes to join forces once again and take him down. Although ultimately he would survive and escape, only to eventually return in Secret Wars 3. Secret Wars 3 would see the return of the Beyond, who was resurrected by the Maestro. And in order to stop him, the heroes had to make the ultimate sacrifice and use the power cosmic to destroy both the Beyonder and the Maestro once and for all, an action that wiped out pretty much every hero in existence. However, there was another option, one that was actually hinted at in the previous story. And instead of destroying the Beyonder and the Maestro, the heroes could have simply brought them back to their own universes. And in the end, that's exactly what they decided to do. This allowed the heroes to save their own universe in the multiverse, but at the cost of their lives. So, which ending will the MCU adapt? Will it be the one where everyone dies, or the one where everyone lives? Well, it's too early to tell at this moment. But it's safe to say that regardless of which ending they choose, the stakes are going to be higher than ever before, and the consequences of failure will be greater as well. As for which characters will appear in Secret Wars, it's rumored that almost every hero currently in the MCU will band together for the film, similar to the comics. We've already seen that the Illuminati are in the works, and we know that the Young Avengers are going to be introduced in the near future. So, it's likely that they will play a major role in the film. Not to mention that there are rumors circulating around the return of certain characters who have already bit the dust in the MCU. Now, personally, I think that it's way too early to speculate on which characters will appear. The best thing to do is wait until we get closer to the film's release date, and then we can start talking about casting. In the meantime, though, it would be cool to see the MCU branch out and introduce some lesser-known characters from the comics, such as Sleepwalker, who was introduced during the original Secret Wars event. Sleepwalker is a superhero whose real identity is Kyle Richmond. He gained his powers after being exposed to a chemical called Project K, which gave him the ability to manipulate his own subconscious mind. Another character that I would love to see is Firestar, who also made her first appearance in the original Secret Wars comic. Firestar, whose real name is Angelica Jones, got her powers after being caught in a freak lab accident while working as a scientist. She developed the ability to generate plasma energy constructs that she can then manipulate at will. Fun fact, Firestar actually used to be a member of the New Mutants back in the day. Now, in addition to introducing new characters, the MCU could also adapt some of the iconic cover art from the comics. The covers for Secret Wars, no, 1, 8, and 11 would all make for some awesome movie posters if the MCU wanted to go that route. And while it's unlikely that they would pay homage to the covers of issues 3, 6, and 9, the images on those covers could also be used to promote merchandise such as Funko Pops. Speaking of Funko Pops, we already have a few different figures based on the Secret Wars storyline, including a 10-inch figure of the Beyonder and a 5-inch figure of Spider-Man in his original suit. We also have a few different variant figures, such as a glow-in-the-dark version of Spider-Man, a black and white version of the Beyonder, and even a flocked version of Spider-Man and the Beyonder. Now overall, the tone of the Secret Wars movie is expected to be a bit darker than previous MCU films, which makes sense given the source material. In the comics, the stakes were very high, and the consequences of failure were dire. The world as we knew it was literally at stake, and it's likely that the MCU will follow suit and deliver a more mature and serious story. However, this doesn't mean that the movie will be without its comedic elements. As the MCU is known for its witty banter and charming characters, it's just that the comedy will likely be more subdued and in line with the source material. In fact, the MCU has already set the stage for a darker tone in recent films such as Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, and Spider-Man No Way Home. For example, in Infinity War, the Avengers were not able to stop Thanos from carrying out his plan to wipe out half of the universe. In Endgame, they traveled back in time to undo this action. But this came at a great cost, as Tony Stark had to sacrifice himself in order to defeat Thanos. And in Spider-Man No Way Home, Peter Parker had to make a difficult decision to sacrifice his own happiness for the greater good. These films showed that the MCU is willing to take risks and explore more mature themes, which bodes well for Secret Wars, which is sure to be one of the darkest and most emotionally resonant stories yet. So while the MCU is indeed ending with Secret Wars, it's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it has an opportunity for the franchise to go out with a bang and deliver a story that is both satisfying and thought-provoking. Just don't expect any lighthearted fun. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and you consider following for more content. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more videos coming soon.